Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, it looks like the Majestic 12 documents that we've been talking about for decades now, since the 1980s, have been validated, further validated. I always believed that those documents were real. I've talked about these documents and the existence of MJ12, but basically a secret government group that studies UFOs and extraterrestrials and keeps it covered up, does the reverse engineering, is involved in all of that. It was established back in the late 1940s, a couple of months after the Roswell incident, which happened in July of 1947. Harry S. Truman started it. I've talked about this in numerous different episodes, different aspects of it. In fact, I will leave links to a lot of the different episodes that are in the description where I discussed this in the past. I mean, these documents, I believe, are real. There's a lot to the Majestic 12 documents. They actually started getting leaked in the early 1980s to some UFO researchers, and it continued on through the 90s into the 2000s. There was a lot of different Majestic 12 documents that were leaked to UFO investigators. And of course, the government has always denied that they were real. However, now we have evidence that shows that they are real, right? They were real the whole time. There's some aspects to those documents that jibe with other documents that have been declassified by the government in recent years. And this person online, MJ12 Logic, has figured it out. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, I read this initially on Reddit, and I looked at a couple of different links. There was a couple other people talking about this new discovery by MJ12 Logic, including Jeffrey Cruikshank. He's a former Australian intelligence officer who's known these days for his work on classified documents such as the JFK files and UAP. And he says that this shows that these documents, the ones that were leaked, this helps validate them. This authenticates them because there were documents that were released in 2022 that MJ12 Logic discovered that have some of the same numbers on there as some of the documents that were leaked in the past to UFO researchers with regards to MJ12. And so now it looks like that's it. I mean, this is another nail in the coffin of evidence with regard to the existence of Majestic 12. We don't know if it still exists today, if it's still called that. Who knows what they call it today? But in the 40s and the 50s, probably into the 60s, it was known as Majestic 12. And this seemingly validates it. And also somebody else weighed in, Whitley Strieber, of course, weighed in on this too. And he sees this as evidence that shows that this has been authenticated, that this validates the previously leaked MJ12 documents. And we're going to get into this right now. Now, here was from MJ12 Logic's Substack page. And he calls the headline here, Majestic Documents Validation, How One Recently Declassified CIA File Validates Several Majestic Documents. And I'm going to just stop there for a second. I'm going to even go further than that. There's a domino effect that has happened here. And I'm going to show you what I mean. This really is big news, folks. To me, this is big news because this shows, I mean, there's a lot of, over the years over the last 5 years, I've been talking about this. There's a lot of different people out there who have done work on these documents. For instance, like Ryan Wood and his father, Robert Wood. This is a book from Ryan Wood, Magic Eyes Only. They did a lot of work on this document that was dated from 1954 that was leaked in 1990 to a UFO researcher. The Special Operations Manual, this big, huge manual that shows how people working for the secret control group for Majestic 12 cover things up. How do they create and alien bodies and recovered craft? I mean, how do they ship them? What do they do? How do they respond to the public? I talked about that before too in the past. There's so many different aspects to these leaked documents, and I think that this is like this new evidence now is like, to me, is like a domino effect. It helps validate all of it. And you're going to see what I'm talking about here as we go through this. But anyway, this is what MJ12 Logic writes. I recently spent some time reviewing the Majestic documents to see whether they shared any consistent identifying markers that could be used for corroboration. If folks have seen this validation elsewhere, please let me know. I have not seen it before, so you're the one who discovered this, MJ12 Logic. You're the one who deserves the credit for this one. This post will be less writing and more concerned with simply sharing some relevant evidence I recently discovered validating the veracity of certain Majestic documents. And then he talks about this number on some recently released CIA documents that were declassified in 2022. And this number on some of these documents was 834021. And this is with regard to the Operation Paperclip, which was an effort to bring in Nazi scientists back in the 40s to work on atomic programs for the United States. And those were the documents that were declassified in 2022, documents from the CIA pertaining to this Operation Paperclip. And this number, 834021, is all over those documents, which nobody in the public ever saw those numbers before. They were on those documents that were just released until 2022. Nobody saw that number before until MJ12 Logic figured this out. And this is what he writes about that number. He says, eventually, I realized that a few of the Majestic docs have a stamp in the lower right-hand corner with the identifying number 834021, followed by the corresponding page number. Curious to see if this existed with any contemporaneous declassified evidence, I checked the CIA Freedom of Information Act portal. And then he has an image here from that portal, from the CIA portal on that. And he continues here. He says, much to my pleasant surprise, I discovered this was not some random, irrelevant document. Far from it. As it would turn out, I had discovered, I think he meant to say random, irrelevant number. Far from it. As it would turn out, I had discovered 345 pages of paperclip intelligence documents that were only declassified on June 22nd, 2022, literally not even 4 years ago. And then I realized something even cooler. It turned out that all of these docs also had the 834021 identifying stamp in the lower right-hand corner of each page. For example, here is a screenshot showing 4 of the 345 pages, each of which with the 834021 circled in red for reference. And then he has images from these documents. Actually, I'll pull them up on the screen right now. These are the documents he's talking about. This is right from the CIA.gov website. These are declassified documents. And you'll see here on the bottom of the page, 834021. 8340, it keeps showing up every page just about, right? There we go again, 834021. So it's on all these pages of this document, and this was the subject was intelligence value of German scientists in the atomic energy field. So that's what he's talking about there. This document, those documents, all those pages that were declassified not until 2022, long after these Majestic 12 documents were getting leaked, starting in the 1980s. And then he goes on, he says, now, here are the relevant Majestic documents I mentioned earlier. First, not surprisingly, is a CIA JIOA paperclip document, URL in screenshot below, that also bears this routing number in addition to the MJ12 name on the distribution list. There it is. See the numbers. Hold on a second. Let me pull it up here. Right here. He has a number circled. It's on this. This was a document that was leaked back in, I believe this one was leaked back in the 1980s. Yes, and this was one of the MJ12 Majestic documents that you could that were leaked. And actually, there's a website that Ryan Wood has, Robert and Ryan Wood on majesticdocuments.com. They have just about everything on there that has been leaked. Including that special operations manual. And you can see that the number is written on there. And here's another one. It says, also, for example, is the table of contents for this MJ12 annual report. Note the 834021 in the lower right-hand corner. And there's another number he found on this one. It says ER12735 in the upper right-hand corner, as also seen on page 3 of this recently declassified file. So you see these numbers are on these pages. On the bottom you have the 834021, and at the top he noticed there was another number, so he wanted to check this number out too. This ER, where is it at here? In the upper right hand corner. Yeah, this right here, ER12735. And he found that. He went back to some of the CIA documents and he found that number appear in another declassified document. Now this is never the one that we're looking at right now. This has not been declassified. This is the government is, that's not those that's all phony. No, now it looks like it's not phony now, because how could they possibly have the same identifying markers on there? How could that be possible? you're going to tell me that some hoaxer back in the 80s and 90s thought all of this through, even the numbers like this. That's impossible, folks. When you think about this, it becomes impossible. And this document here, this leaked document, was not for public inspection, and it dealt with UFOs. It says here on the top, it says the aforementioned panel under the direct presidential directive signed on 26 September 1947 has been tasked with responsibility of providing answers to a most troublesome and disturbing phenomena that of otherworld visitation and what it portends for the human family. In it is in this vein that the panel has addressed the problem and in providing possible answers. He goes on here. He says, and then there's another number here, the A1762.1. Relatedly, I ran a check against the routing number A1762.1 in the CIA FOIA portal. Unsurprisingly, it yielded one single result. And he says, more surprising, and then he has the result right here. It did come up. There was a Joint Intelligence Committee memorandum from 1950 that came up. So that number did exist too, right? And he found that that number was from one of the leaked documents that was never declassified, that the government says aren't real, right? But that number does appear on other documents, right? On a different document. And then he goes on. More surprising to me, however, was that this yielded one hit on page 3 of 5 of this PDF declassified on June 13th, 2003. One positive match with the A-1762.1 identifier. Even more interesting was that this doc actually had one additional identifier, ER1-2735. That was the other one that we're talking about, in the upper right-hand corner, which is seen in the MJ annual report immediately following the image and in the immediately preceding MJ table of contents. So yeah, so he has these numbers circled on these docs. I'm going to leave the links for all of this stuff so you can check it out for yourself. And then it goes on here. Within the first MJ12 annual report screenshot below, see the matching executive registry number ER12735 in the upper right-hand corner, in addition to the matching A-1762.1 in the middle of the page here. So there's all told, he's talking about 3 different identifier numbers that he found in declassified documents from the government that also appeared in certain MJ12 documents that talk about the recovery of the object in Roswell, as well as alien bodies and all of that stuff. I'm going to show you how all of this connects in a second. It's unbelievable. Right here, this document here, there's that on the top hand corner there. You can see the ER12735, and this is a leaked document that the government says isn't real. The government has told us in the past that these documents that were leaked were bogus, and now we could plainly see that they're not bogus because a lot of them have the same identifying numbers that were on some of the CIA documents that were on some different CIA documents related to other closely related concerns, like Project Paperclip, right? Or Operation Paperclip. This one here talks about MJ12. This document that we're looking at right now mentions MJ12, and it has some of the identifying same kind of numbers right here. Actually, 2 different numbers, the A-1762.1 as well as the ER-1-2735. It has 2 of the identifying numbers. And I'm going to show you what's interesting. Well, we'll get to the end of this, and I'm going to show you how some of this all lines up. And he goes on here. Last but not least, we have CIA SI 28-55, described as Top Secret Intelligence Agency Information Report CIA SI 28-55, entitled A Digest of Worldwide Unidentified Flying Object Intelligence Material as Contained in the Armed Forces Security Agency Signals, Radar, Communications, and Human Intelligence Operations in the first 5 years. The relevant file from the CIA FOIA portal is a 3-page PDF, with the 3rd page being a letter from Sam Goldsmith to a redacted individual regarding the Robertson panel's conclusions. The letter on page 3 is not relevant. What is relevant is the annotated note on page 2, which I have circled in red and included here for reference. And he's talking about this right here. This number here, that number he's talking about appears here, right here. This all but confirms that CIA/SI28-55 indeed was the file number for internal CIA UFO reports, along with the veracity of the information in the first MJ12 annual report cover page shown above. These findings provide additional evidence of MJ12's existence during the late 1940s and 50s. It's virtually impossible to logically reconcile this supporting evidence with the idea that Majestic 12 was just some paperwork invented during the 1980s. Perhaps this represents the type of disclosure we should expect in 2026, not from the government, but from dedicated civilian research. Yeah, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take civilians like this, like all of us out there. It's going to take us to embarrass the government into the position of having to release this stuff, right? I mean, I was talking in the previous show about how it doesn't look now like we're going to get real disclosure because the Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has turned over the authority of releasing UFO documents over to Arrow. They're already doing that, and they're not giving us anything. It's just going to be the same old song and dance. A lot of people believe that it's going to end up, we're not going to get anything out of this, although President Trump did direct Hegseth to start releasing this stuff. I don't think we're going to get it right now. But however, maybe we will get it if we keep pushing forward with stuff like this, with evidence like this that shows. This shows, right, to me right now, this puts another nail in the coffin for Roswell for sure, as well as a lot of other UFO crashes. This shows that MJ12 was real. There's no way that some hoaxer could have thought of all of these different elements, including putting numbers in like this, these identifying markers throughout these documents. Okay, now I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole here to show you how all of this connects and how it's like a domino effect, why this is so important, this discovery is so important. Okay, now this one here now, this leaked document that the government has stated is phony in the past, we know now it's real because it has identifying numbers that appear on other documents that were declassified in recent years, right? In the 2000s, right? Long after, excuse me, when these documents were originally leaked. But if you look at the top here, it says the aforementioned panel, under the direct presidential directive signed on September 26, 1947, has been tasked with the responsibility of providing answers to a most troublesome and disturbing phenomenon, that of otherworld visitation and what it portends for the human family. It is in this vein that the panel has addressed the problem and in providing possible answers. Okay, so we see that in this document right here, that September 26, 1947, and this document now we could say is authenticated, it's validated, because these identifying numbers appear on other documents that have now been declassified, even though the government has never declassified this specific document. But let's take that September 26, 1947 date and look at this document here. This is what this document here, according to this is majestic12.com. Majesticdocuments.com website that Ryan Wood and Robert Wood put together. It talks about this document in particular, the Majestic 12 Project Annual Report, okay? It says, this draft is not dated, but from dates mentioned in the document, the latest is May 1951. We believe that it was written in the summer of 1952 on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of the July 1947 crashes. It contains the nature of the investigation, the panel's contribution to the top-secret Majestic documents, a review of the military assessment and various problems in relation to technology, blah, 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 okay? And then when you look up the document itself, you scroll through this, it talks about the September 26, 1947. It says on September 26, 1947, the first meeting of the MSC-1 were held to discuss the New Mexico incidents and how to implement the policy established by MJ12. Okay, so it says September 26th on there. So, and if you think about it, right, if you look at the documents that everybody's been talking about for years, you know, that Stanton Friedman talked about a lot in this book he wrote, Top Secret Magic, which I've talked about before on the show. You know, it was only 2 days earlier that Truman signed the document, signed the created Majestic 12. So, and then on September 26th, the first meeting was held. Okay, that's what it says there. So let's look at the eyes and this document, right? Because of this document here, let's go through this. Let me just go through this with you step by step. This document, right, has never been officially verified as real by the government. The government has said that this document, along with a lot of the other leaked MJ12 documents, are fake, the one that's on the screen right now. But now we could say that it is real based on the work of MJ12 Logic. Right, we could say that this document now it's real because it has numbers on it that there's only one way those numbers could have been on there. That means it's real, right? These numbers appear on other officially released declassified government documents. So now we see that September 26th, and you go to this, and it talks about on September 26th on this document. Now, this document, of course, doesn't have these numbers on it, but this was released to. This is some of the same documents that were released to UFO researchers at the same time throughout the 80s and 90s, right? On September 26th, the first meeting was held. So now, you think about the briefing document to Eisenhower and what it says on there, and included in the briefing document on the bottom of this, right, as an attachment A of the briefing document, it says this was something that was signed on September 24th, 1947, to the Secretary of Defense at the time, James Forrestal. It says, "Dear Secretary Forrestal, as per our recent conversation on this matter, you are hereby authorized to proceed with all due speed and caution upon your undertaking. Hereafter, this matter shall be referred to only as Operation Majestic 12. It continues to be my feeling that any future considerations relative to the ultimate disposition of this matter should rest solely with the office of the President, following appropriate discussions with yourself, Dr. Bush, and the Director of Central Intelligence, signed Harry Truman." Okay. And of course, this is the briefing document itself. Okay, that was a copy that was included in the briefing document of this directive that was signed by the President Truman on the 24th of September. And just so you know, I did look in the official historical records. There's nothing from September 24th or September 26th that Harry Truman signed, according to the official records, right? But he did sign something. He signed something on the 24th. He must have signed this one because we know it's real now because of this. Because the September 26th, the directive, the aforementioned panel under the direct presidential directive signed on the 26th, right, which was the date, which happened to be the date, was the first meeting of the MJ12. I think they might have got it mixed up here a little bit, but still, it's all in the same time frame there, right? And you go back to the Eisenhower document, and we all know what this says. I mean, a lot of us do. This was something that was held with the president-elect at the time. It says it's a top secret, magic eyes only document. And it says Operation Majestic, it says here, note, this document has been prepared as a preliminary briefing only. It should be regarded as introductory to a full operations briefing intended to follow. Operation Majestic 12 is a top secret research and development intelligence operation responsible directly and only to the President of the United States. Operations of the project are carried out under control of the Majestic 12 group, which was established by special classified executive order of President Truman on September 24th, 1947, under recommendation of Dr. Vannevar Bush and Secretary James Forrestal. See attachment A, and that was the document from the 24th that we were just talking about. And it has the list of the Majestic 12 members, including Bush, Donald Menzel, and so on and so forth. And it goes on to say that the death of Secretary Forrestal on May 22nd, 1949, created a vacancy which remained unfilled until August 1st, 1950, upon which date General Walter B. Smith was designated as permanent replacement. And then it talks about the Kenneth Arnold sighting in June of 1947, and how the public was reacting and the hysteria that was ongoing. And it goes on to say, in spite of these efforts, little of substance was learned about the objects until a local rancher reported that one had crashed in a remote region of New Mexico, located approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell Army Air Base, now Walker Field. On July 7th, 1947, a secret operation was begun to assure recovery of the wreckage of this object for scientific study. During the course of this operation, aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had apparently ejected from the craft at some point before it exploded. These had fallen to Earth about 2 miles east of the wreckage site. All 4 were dead and badly decomposed due to action by predators and exposure to the elements during the approximately 1 week time period which had elapsed before their discovery. A special scientific team took charge of removing these bodies for study. See attachment C. The record, see, I love to see attachment C. I mean, that would be great, wouldn't it, to see attachment C and all these other attachments. The wreckage of the craft was also removed to several different locations. See attachment B. Oh, I bet you attachment B is explosive. Civilian and military witnesses in the area were debriefed, and news reporters were given the effective cover story that the object had been a misguided weather research balloon. And then it talks about the covert analytical effort organized by General Nathan Twining and Dr. Vannevar Bush, acting on the direct orders of Truman, resulted in a preliminary consensus on September 19, 1947, that the disk was most likely a short-range reconnaissance craft. This conclusion was based, for the most part, on the craft's size and the apparent lack of any identifiable provisioning. See attachment D. Oh, I bet you attachment D has a lot to show us. Oh, boy. Unfortunately, the only attachment that they had in there was attachment A. This was leaked back in I believe, 1984 to a UFO researcher at the time. And then Stanton Friedman got involved. But, boy, I love to see some of these other attachments. This would be great for disclosure. I'd love to see these things. A similar analysis of the 4 dead occupants was arranged by Dr. Bronk. It was the tentative conclusion of this group on 30 November 1947 that although these creatures are human-like in appearance, the biological and evolutionary processes responsible for their development has apparently been quite different from those observed or postulated in Homo sapiens. Dr. Bronk's team has suggested the term extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs, be adopted as the standard term for reference of these creatures until such time as a more definitive designation can be agreed upon. Since it is virtually certain that these craft do not originate in any country on Earth, considerable speculation is centered around what their point of origin might be and how they get here. Mars was and remains a possibility, although some scientists, most notably Dr. Donald Menzel, consider it more likely that we are dealing with beings from another solar system entirely. I agree with Dr. Menzel, even though he went on to be the first big-time debunker out there, lying to the public about all this stuff. And it goes on to say, numerous examples of what appear to be a form of writing were found in the wreckage. Efforts to decipher these have remained largely unsuccessful. See attachment E. Wow, would that be something to see? Attachment E, to see what the writing looks like. Equally unsuccessful have been efforts to determine the method of propulsion or the nature or method of transmission of the power source involved. Research along these lines has been complicated by the complete absence of identifiable wings, propellers, jets, or other conventional methods of propulsion and guidance, as well as a total lack of metallic wiring, vacuum tubes, or similar recognizable electronic components. See attachment F. Oh boy, attachment F. How about that one? Wouldn't that be nice to see that, folks? It is assumed that the propulsion unit was completely destroyed by the explosion which caused the crash. And it goes on, and I'll leave the link for this. I mean, a lot of you have already know all about this, and talks about another crash that occurred at in 1950 at the Texas-Mexican border. In the El Indio Guerrero area of the Texas-Mexican border. There was that crash, and then it has the list of the attachments. The only attachment that was included, of course, was the directive signed by, and of course that was signed by Truman on 24 September 1947, and the rest of them were not included, of course. And some of these other attachments, of course, would show us images, like look at this, attachment H, Operation Majestic 12, maps and photographs folio. I wonder what we would get to see if we got to see that, right? So it's all very, very interesting, I must say. And this does seem to me, the fact, I think the discovery made here by MJ12 Logic does seem to really reinforce the fact that those documents were real all along. Like a lot of us had thought. I always believed that they were correct, that these documents were real. There's just no question in my mind about it, based on all the research that was done by the Woods, as well as Stanton Friedman, among many others who have been talking about this for decades. And now we see that some of the identifying numbers that are used on some of these documents that the government creates, they created some documents with relation to project or Operation Paperclip, and some of the same identifying numbers that we see in those documents appear on some of these Roswell documents that were leaked decades before these other documents were declassified. So again, this just adds more fuel to the fire, and this shows to me that these things are real, and other people are believing that they're real as well, including this is Jeffrey Cruikshank. He's that former Australian intelligence officer who did some research on classified work involving UAP and the JFK files. And this is what he says about it. Let me just scroll down. I want to say one thing that he says. He says the bottom line here, MJ12 was real and it utilized Nazi scientists to continue the UFO research. This is from Cruikshank's Substack page. But yeah, he has more stuff here. I'll leave a link for this one so you can check it out. This is fascinating stuff, ladies and gentlemen, I must say. And it just further confirms, further authenticates, further validates that Majestic 12 was real. It was a real group. It really started in after a couple of months after Roswell, and now we're starting to really find out about this stuff. And here was from Whitley Strieber. He writes, this was from a few days ago, March 1st. The cover-up has been blown out of the water. This is from Strieber's Substack page as well. In a remarkable achievement of research, Substacker MJ12 Logic has broken the cover-up by proving that the Majestic 12 documents are real. At the same time, Department of Defense, in its effort to blunt or destroy Trump's demand that full disclosure take place, has designated Arrow, the Pentagon's cover-up enforcer, to manage the president's legal demand, presumably by openly defying the law. But then again, they've been getting away with that for 80 years, so why not? Yeah, I mean, President Trump said he wanted all the files on UFOs, he said these words, aliens and extraterrestrials, to be released to the public, right? That means this stuff. That's what he means. So I see. I don't know. I mean, does Hegseth even know this? Is he read in on this stuff? You would have to think that he is. I mean, is he being told that he can? Is he being told by the people who are within the industrial, the military industrial complex? Hey, you can't do that. Hey, you can't do that. Is he being told not to do that? And he's just gonna do some dog and pony show with us and give us the same old Arrow nonsense that we've gotten before. Oh yeah, we don't know what that UFO is in this image. If we had more better equipment, maybe in the future we'll be able to identify it and provide a prosaic explanation, but we don't think there's anything to it. Are we going to get more of that crap? I mean, we want the real stuff. We want the Roswell stuff. We want the Majestic 12 documents. We want to see all those attachments that went along with that Eisenhower briefing document. That's what I'd like to see. So yeah, so he's talking about this. He talked about Wikipedia and how they lie about Majestic 12. He goes on to say, I am not blaming Wikipedia, not yet. It is fundamentally flawed idea because it leaves the door open to more aggressive players with little regard for the truth of their assertions, and that inevitably enables people like professional liars working for organizations like the Defense Department to dominate the conversation. And then later on, what Strieber writes, so what was MJ12? What did it do? And is it still active? If not under the same name, then in some other way? Let's take a look exactly what the documents say. First, MJ12 was real, and that was its correct name. This is now certain because among the CIA documents, there is one specifically entitled Majestic 12 Project, which covers the release of a review of the President's special panel to investigate the capture of unidentified platform space vehicles by U.S. armed forces and agencies. Yes. This is, and most of the others in the CIA file, are present in the original group of Majestic 12 documents found by Stanton Friedman and discussed in his book, Top Secret Magic Operation Majestic 12. Yes, and that's the book I have right here. Great book. If you don't have this is a book I believe everybody should have in their library as well. It's fantastic. As it is now clear that the documents Stanton discusses are real, the book is well worth a look. I totally agree with that statement. Yes. And there's more to these Substack articles as well. But I guess the bottom line is this, folks, is that it looks like MJ12 is real, was always real from the get-go. Of course, I believe that some of the documents that were released as the years went by could have been false documents sent by who knows who, or were created. You could tell some of them, right? But a lot of the stuff I was talking about here, for instance, like the Oppenheimer-Einstein letter. I mean, I did shows on that one specifically. That stuff, that means things like that are real. Like a lot of these documents that people, or the white hot MJ12 document. I did a show just on that one. I did a show on a lot of different MJ12 documents, and I talked about why these documents could not have been faked. It has been discussed by a lot of other researchers. I pointed out their research and added some of my own commentary to this. They couldn't have been faked, and now we have these identifying numbers that were discovered by MJ12 Logic on the Substacker. He discovered these numbers doing some research on his own, right? And he by looking at some of these newly released CIA declassified documents, and the numbers on there match numbers that appear on some of these documents that were leaked. these MJ12 documents that were leaked over the decades. And of course, one of the most fascinating document to me was the Special Operations Manual, which I did a show on this one too before in the past. Here it is here. The special extraterrestrial. I'll leave links for all of this stuff. This is very fascinating stuff. Extraterrestrial entities and technology recovery and disposable, top secret, magic, eyes only. Look at this thing. April 1954. This was leaked to a UFO researcher named Don Berliner in the early 90s. And yeah, it looks like there might be some numbers on here. I wonder, it's hard to read them. I wonder if there's any identifying numbers here that anybody could find. I don't know. Who knows? I'm gonna have to go through with this with a fine-tooth comb and find out. Of course, the people in the government said this was all fake too. But when you look at this, you realize this there's no way somebody could have faked something like this. This would have taken way too much time. Can you imagine just coming up with a hoax? Look at this. Look at the pages of this thing. This was sent on microfilm to Don Berliner. This stuff, right? This Special Operations Manual was sent like that. Talks about the different kinds of aliens that they had found up to this point. Up to 1954, there were two different EBE types, Type 1 and Type 2. I mean, it's fascinating stuff, fascinating. And whoever did this, they must have snuck in a camera somewhere and took pictures of every page of this book, and then they eventually that film was sent to Don Berliner. Nobody knows when this was. When these pictures were taken or when that was created. It even talks about press blackout on here. It says, great care must be taken to preserve the security of any location where extraterrestrial technology might be retrievable for scientific study. Extreme measures must be taken to protect and preserve any material or craft from discovery, examination, or removal by civilian agencies or individuals of the general public. It is therefore recommended that a total press blackout be initiated whenever possible. If this course of action should not prove feasible, the following cover stories are suggested for release to the press. The officer in charge will act quickly to select the cover story that best fits the situation. It should be remembered when selecting a cover story that official policy regarding UFOBs is that they do not exist. One of the things they did is official denial, discredit witnesses, deceptive statements. Yeah. So it talks about everything they need to do, right, to when something crashes, when one of these craft comes down. So there you go, folks. It looks like these things have been the Majestic 12 documents have been validated. I always thought that they were real, and I think this is just further evidence to that end. So I'll leave a link to all of this stuff. There's a lot of stuff you could read on the Majestic 12, the majesticdocuments.com website. There's tons of material you could read there that the Woods have compiled. And then of course there's these Substack articles. There's 3 different Substack articles, one by MJ12 Logic, and then another one by Jeff Cruikshank, and also one by Whitley Strieber, where they're talking about this. To me, this is a big story. It should be. I'm not sure if it's being talked about nationally or internationally at this point. I don't think it is. There was people talking about it on Reddit, but if you look at this, when you think about this, the fact that there's certain identifying numbers that appear in some of these declassified CIA documents pertaining to Operation Paperclip, that a lot of these documents were released in 2022. That's when this one was released. It was over 100 pages long, and that number was on there. He looked at that number and started finding, okay, in this MJ12 document that was leaked that the government said is fake, that number's there too. That doesn't, why is that? And then there were other numbers that he was able to find, 4 different identifying numbers. And there might be more here to look for. I mean, everybody should be looking at this. There might be more to discover here if we just take a closer look at it now. We can base it on some of the declassified UFO documents, declassified paperclip documents, whatever. Find out, see if there's any numbers in there that might match up with some of these numbers that we see appearing on some of the Majestic 12 documents that were leaked decades ago. And if they match up, then that just provides further corroboration that it's all real, that the documents were real in the first place, and that there was no way that it was all made up by somebody, right? Anyway, it's very exciting to me. I'm very interested in these documents, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are also interested. And maybe this will help prod the disclosure that they've been talking about recently. Maybe this will help get us there. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it will just get forgotten about just about everything else. Maybe it'll become, maybe it will be treated like the Vegas aliens has been treated by the mainstream. You never know. Who knows? Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.